Hello, guys, how are you? And welcome to the week number 5 of our course of psycholinguistics. Hope everything's going well on your side. You have been able to, hope you have been able to deal with all your academic compromises and commitments. Hope everything's going well for you and your family, your relatives. And oh, by the way, I hope that everything's going well with your alarm clocks because apparently, like, all of them fail at the same time for the last synchronic meeting, right? Anyways, hope that's better for you guys. Well, as usual, I would like to start this session by sharing with you a little literary piece. This time it is by Gustavo Adolfo Becker, and it's a fragment of a tale that I find really attractive and interesting. By the way, it's a good moment to say hello to some people who are watching the videos, even though they are not registering the class, which is really nice, you know. So hello to Gabriela, hello to teacher Jenny. Thanks a lot for your support and your attention. Thank you very much to David Hernandez, who is also one of the supporters of these sorts of videos. Apparently is something useful for some people outside the class, which makes me happy. Anyways, so here's a little fragment of this story. This is called La Jorca de Oro. Ella era hermosa, hermosa con esa hermosura que inspira el vértigo, hermosa con esa hermosura que no se parece en nada a la que soñamos en Los Ángeles, y que, sin embargo, es sobrenatural, hermosura diabólica, que tal vez presta al demonio a algunos seres para hacerlos sus instrumentos en la tierra. Él la amaba con ese amor que no conoce freno ni límites, la amaba con ese amor en que se busca un goce y solo se encuentran martirios, amor que se asemeja a la felicidad y que, no obstante, parece infundir el cielo para la expiación de una culpa. Well, this is a whole story. It's a quite interesting one, but I have always found really striking this initial part because it describes very well some feelings that sometimes we have for people in which they seem to be sort of attractive and repulsive at the same time, and I mean the time that we pass with them make us suffer a little bit, but in the end we sort of enjoy it. Well, guys, so let's go with our subject for the class. Remember that last week we were discussing about David Oswald's meaningful learning theory, and in doing a very big oversimplification, everything was related to connection, to connect that was already known for the student or for the learner, let's say, because it's not necessarily, as I mentioned before, something that is exclusive to academic fields. So relating this information and building upon it, so avoiding starting from scratch, sort of being able to build upon what is already constructed in order to somehow match other concepts and other propositions, and be able to somehow advance and create new knowledge. Okay, so as I mentioned in the last class, we're going to talk today a little bit about forgetting. Okay, forgetting seems to be a systematic a random process for some people. You know, sometimes you just seem to forget things without a lot of justifications. It seems to be a little bit accidental, and of course, although it may have some medical conditions and it may have some genetic susceptibility or some causes associated with the lack of exercise, of memoristic exercise, nevertheless, Oswald proposes that forgetting can be a systematic exercise, right? So he proposes something called systematic forgetting. What is systematic? Well, that it actually is not random or is not accidental necessarily, but that it follows certain rules and even sometimes certain uses, right? As I mentioned before in last week's video, there is some type of forgetting that is positive somehow, that is, let's say, contributes to something better, to improve certain conditions, or to create a bigger knowledge, okay? So he presents two types of forgetting. If you go to the slide number 23, you will see how he describes the process of forgetting in rote learning, right? So remember one more time that this rote learning is the memoristic learning that is not connected, that, well, we have already talked about that in the previous videos. If you require to remember a little bit about that, you can check it. So this systematic forgetting in rote learning is represented here by this graphic, with this diagram. So as you can see, these triangles over there are the ideas, concepts, propositions, topics, information, you name it, that the student or the person is remembering or forgetting or learning, right? Remember that we're dealing with learning over here. So he presents like a first stage, that is the one on the left, in which he says that normally in rote learning, let's say that the acquisition of knowledge of these items that I already mentioned, that may be propositions or concepts or information in general, they do not have any sort of systematic organization. Yes, so he proposes, for example, the very traditional school in which we see our topics, our subjects isolated, apparently with zero connection among themselves. They don't have any deliberate order. There is not a big plan in order to present that to the student, and everything is separate, right? Which, according to Ausubel theory, it's a big mistake. Yes, that is what he proposes, that everything must be connected. So this initial acquisition that has no order at all in times, in degrees of difficulty, has no order in connection of concepts, right? Has not, let's say, close frontiers from one subject to the other. As I mentioned, anything that is common may be accidental. So this initial disposition is going to cause that from all of that, as you can see on the left, there are a lot of triangles, they are just messy, yes, one close to another, and no organization at all. So if we go to the second stage, we are going to find that there is an inefficient retention, yes, because of interfering of contiguous items. What does it mean? Yes, so first of all, notice that in the second stage we have less triangles. We receive a lot in the first. In the second one, well, they are a little bit more organized, but there are just a few. Yes, just a few of those items are in there. And the retention, well, is the possibility of memorizing, or let's say, even if it's not learning by heart, is the possibility of remembering the basic concepts, the basic ideas or propositions of a certain topic. So not only we have less things that we remember, but also that knowledge interfere one with the other. Okay, so think about those cases in which you have 2 or 3 evaluations in the same day. Yes, imagine that you have three different tests in the same day, and if those evaluations or those tests require for you to memorize anything, well, it's going to be quite difficult, right? Like, you are going to mix concepts of one subject with the other. just for the fact of trying to memorize certain thing for one subject, you are going to forget the others, or maybe you are going to mix them together, and well, that wouldn't be like good for your evaluation, no? So usually when we learn in that way, because sure, you're at some point you're learning, right? Even if you're memorizing, you are having retention of information somehow, and you remember it, maybe by heart, exact same words or the general ideas. But well, you learn a little bit. Nevertheless, these mutual things are not complementary; they are exclusory. Yes, somehow they are making it difficult for you to remember everything at the same time. Yes, again, you're sort of using things individually. Well, the day of the evaluation passed. You hopefully passed all the subjects, or passed two, or passed one test, but you learned a little bit at least. Yes, you were able to have retention of this knowledge at a certain level. But well, if you learn in that way, Oswald mentions that in a week, in 2 weeks, in a month, next semester, what is going to be left from that retention is going to be minimum, or nothing at all, right? So as you can see, for example, if you were able to memorize certain things for your test or whatever, you will see that in the third part there is a dotted line. Yes, they are not even complete triangles. Yes, there are fragments of information that are missing. Yes, so let's say that Oswald proposes that this is not the best way to learn or to forget, right? So normally this knowledge or these concepts or this learning that took place thanks to this system is going to be immediately forgotten. Yes, before or after the learning task. Yes. Well, the most common is after. Sure, you pass the test, you got your 3, and then you already pass and you forget about it. Yes. Even worse is when you forget that before the task. Yes, it may happen as well. We have so many things concentrated for the same day, for the same time, or for the same afternoon, let's say, that it is likely that you can forget that even before the exam, and then you say, but I had, I went to sleep really late, I was practicing, memorizing, repeating, and I knew everything, and then I arrived into the test, and I was blank. I didn't know anything. Well, that is not so uncommon, right? So I'm sure that you have listened to of the case of somebody, if it has not been yourself, and it's difficult to explain. I mean, in the light of the of other people believing it. But well, now you have over here an educational and, let's say it, scientific reasons for those things to happen. Okay. Well, so it will be a little bit about this process of forgetting in rote learning. Now, how is this ideal forgetting that Oswald proposes for meaningful learning, right? So if you go to the slide number 24, you will see that we have again 3 cycles, right, or 3 stages. So in the first stage, you will see these different triangles that are not chaotic like in the previous stage, like in the previous learning style, that was the rote. No, in this case, they are somewhat organized. They are still disconnected. Yes, you see there are some spaces between the triangles, but they are close enough so they can have a general shape, right? So it looks like a pyramid. Now, what does it mean? Like, graphically, what is the translation? Well, that the topics are presented, or the subjects, or the information is presented in a way that, let's say, it's easier, or it's somehow more possible to take a look at the general picture, right? So the way in which the curriculum is organized, the ways in which the subjects are presented, or the way in which the information is shown to you. Remember that we can be talking about schools, universities, or simply any practical process. So it sort of makes sense. You see the connections. Remember what I mentioned before about my experience in some school, in which you really see the connection between math and language, and biology and math, because you could see statistics in both, because you use language in all of them, because you could use some of your artistic knowledge, and it was required for other subjects. So the way in which they are presented makes more sense, right? Now, in the second stage, we see that this, by the connections proposed by the teachers or by the person, whoever is let's say, providing this information or this methodology, well, thanks to their efforts, like everything pulls together, right? So in the previous stage, there was some sort of coherence. Now we have cohesion over here, in which all the concepts and everything that we already mentioned, the triangles, these items represent concepts or propositions or ideas or information. Well, they all fit together and they form a unit. Okay? Of course, this is an ideal situation. There are certain things or certain fields that definitely cannot be connected, right? Let's say that there are things that are not necessarily connected, but in general terms, this is something that we can relate, right? So let's think about math and music, for example. Everything's in there, because everything that has to do with rhythm and with numbers is together in there, right? Or how, for example, English language and Spanish can just be put together, and well, all the examples that I gave you in there. So eventually, all these concepts are going to be collaborative. Yes, on how one experiencing one of the concepts or ideas or information will be helping me to get the other ones. Now here comes the interesting thing. Yes, and this is the systematic forgetting here, right? If you go to the slide to the next stage, you will see that we have some other chunks of knowledge. Yes, there was the original triangle, that was the one in the middle, and it was associated with even more, with even bigger or more abundant chunks of knowledge. Yes, so let's imagine that this the triangle that we were talking, as I mentioned, it is the combination of the concepts of math and music. And let's imagine that the triangle A is the combination of the concepts of English language and Spanish language, and the B, let's imagine that it's, for example, math and physics. Yes, like everything that has to do with algebra, with maybe calculus. Yes, that is pretty associated in there. And let's imagine that the C has to do with physical education, everything that has to do with sports and things like that. And something like math, yes? Well, you need math in order to calculate scores, to calculate, for example, positionings, yes? So all of them are in there. And they are likely to be interchangeable, yes? Because remember that in the triangle that we're dealing, there is math, and in the, I think it was in the C, yes, in the C there is also math. So somehow, let's say different concepts are collaborative and not exclusive, okay? Different from the previous case, in which a lot of different, let's say, concepts were generating interruption or disruption. Well, in this case, they are being healthy, okay? Hopefully that is more or less clear. Now, here comes the forgetting part, yes? Sometimes, and I will read this part over here and then I will explain it for you. It's a systematic forgetting. Subsumed items are pruned in favor of a larger, more global conception, which is in turn related to other items in cognitive structure. Okay, so let's try to understand that affirmation over there, right? So it says that the items that are already put together, yes, are pruned. What does it mean, prune? Like when there is a bush or a garden, and you take some scissors, the ones from gardening, and you prune or cut some of the extra branches. You see, some of the extra leaves to give it like a more homogeneous shape, right? That is pruning, literally. So how is pruning in forgetting? You are going to forget or somehow eliminate or pay less attention to some of the more specific details in favor of greater comprehension. Yes? Let me give you 2 examples of that. Pay close attention to this. For example, imagine the case of a child of a very short age, and let's imagine that he is curious by a pot of boiling water, right? So it was on the oven, or it was on the stove, sorry. And well, he was curious about that. He sort of tried to touch the metal surface, and of course it was a hot surface of boiling water, and he burned his finger. This produced a slight shock of pain. He was able to remove it easily or quickly, and well, in that moment, he learned that boiling water produced burn. Yes, that was a very specific knowledge. Yes, so every time that he sort of saw that boiling water, he avoided. He restrained himself for touching it. What about if he was able to see an iron? Yes, so her mom was ironing, the shirts, or his dad was doing that, and left it over there alone for a while. And what do you know? He went again, touched the surface, and again, poor little finger was burned one more time. Well, now he was able to realize that 2 of those things sort of burned, right? Very specific things. First of all, he was away, or he maintained his distance from the boiling water, and now this time he maintained his distance from hot irons. Let's say that he did the same with 2 or 3 or 4 more items. Yes, anything that may be hot in the kitchen, or in the house, or in the living room, or whatever. Eventually, at some point, he is going to forget, right, the idea of these individual learnings. Yes, he is going to forget that boiling water burns, that the iron burns, that let's say hot platters burns, that hot trays burns. He's going to forget, quotes, these individual learnings, and he is going to acquire the general learning that anything that's hot, anything that has high temperature, is going to burn his finger. Well, and even not only his finger, no, he's going to restrain from his face, his elbows, his hands in general, the whole skin, right? So this is a systematic forgetting, like forgetting this information that one by one or isolated is not so useful. Of course, at the moment was pretty useful, but you are going to sacrifice these little details in order to get a more general knowledge, the knowledge that everything that's hot burns, right, and is going to hurt you. Second example, let's try to think about those cases in which you were learning fractions. Yes, when you were a kid in the school. So usually they give us examples with rectangles, and we divide it in certain parts, and we color certain parts, or circles, and we color it, and then we say that is, if we have a unit that is divided into 4 spaces, and we color 1, so we say, oh, that is 1/4. Or if we color 2 of the 4, we say that is 2/4, or that is 1/2, right? So that is the way in which we are taught fractions most of the times, right? There are different ways, but that is one of the most traditional ones. So hopefully you learn that, and you do the exercises, and you work with it, but eventually you are going to forget that, yes, or that sort of input, in favor of understanding the fractions, let's say, concept in general. You are not going to require graphic representations anymore. You are going to have a general conception of quantities and proportions. Yes, so you can say that half of the class was missing from the synchronic session, or you can say that even it was more than half, that it was 3/4 of the class that was missing from the synchronic session, or you can say that I don't know, that is 1/4 to 2 or something like that, right? So hopefully we get it. Like this systematic forgetting, or this positive forgetting that is that Ausubel is proposing, is abandoning certain ideas that are, of course, like a step in order to advance, but that in the future, when we have more general concepts and more comprehensive concepts, well, those little components are not so necessary anymore, so we tend to forget them in favor of something better. So in Ausubel's school of thought, forgetting, when done intentionally and when done with a certain purpose, is always going to be positive, because it's going to help us to grasp more general and more comprehensive meanings. Okay, hopefully that's clear. I know that second part can be a little bit tricky, the one of systematic forgetting and this pruning thing. So if anybody has any question or requires any clarification, please let me know. I will be more than glad to help you, or give you some other examples, or clarifying any of the doubts you have. Okay. Well, we're going to leave this video until here. We're going to talk a little bit more about forgetting in the next one, just a little part of it, and I will be explaining the assignment number 1 for this week. Okay. Thanks a lot for the attention, and see you soon. Bye bye and hugs.